Hey everyone, and welcome. We're diving deep today into dealing with depression, and we'll be using how to break free from depression, steps toward healing and hope to guide us.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, so, when I first started dealing with this stuff, it felt like I was just lost in a fog.
Hmm.
But then I started to figure out that even small steps can make a huge difference, and that's what we really want to get to today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It really is a journey, isn't it? What's interesting is that so many people just try to ignore it and power through it. But
Yeah.
that usually makes things worse, right?
Right, yeah.
You got to acknowledge that you're in this fog.
Yeah.
Like having a physical injury, you wouldn't just pretend it's not there.
Right.
Mental health needs that same kind of care.
That's such a good point. And our source really emphasizes that. Recognizing and accepting those feelings of depression instead of just trying to tough it out, being honest with yourself and getting
Uh,
help when you need it.
Exactly. And reaching out, whether it's to a therapist or a support group or even just a close friend,
Mm-hmm.
that's not weak. That's strong.
Yeah.
It takes real courage to ask for help.
Yeah, for sure. So we've acknowledged that we're in this fog, right?
Right.
How do we even start to move through it? The book talks about the power of small steps, even seemingly insignificant things like getting out of bed or going for a short walk.
Hmm.
That sounds almost too simple, but what makes these small actions so powerful?
Well, it's about getting that momentum going, that sense of, I can do this.
Yeah.
When depression hits, it feels like you're stuck, but
Yeah.
those small actions are like finding solid ground. Again, one tiny step at a time. Each win tells your brain, hey, we can do this. It's like rewiring your reward system.
I love that, finding solid ground. It's so easy to get overwhelmed by the whole journey ahead.
Right.
But if we focus on the very next step, that next tiny win, it suddenly becomes manageable.
Exactly.
So speaking of small steps, let's talk about exercise. I'll admit, when I'm down, exercise is the last thing I want to do.
Ah, yes. Movement is medicine. It often is the last thing we want to do. But even gentle movement triggers so many positive changes in your brain.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
It's not just the endorphins either. It's about literally rewiring those neural pathways.
Yeah.
Making it easier to feel joy and motivation again.
So we're literally changing our brain chemistry just by moving. I never thought of it that way. But does it have to be some crazy workout to get those benefits?
No, not at all.
Mm.
Even a 10-minute walk can make a difference.
Uh,
Remember, we're talking about tiny steps here.
Yeah.
Find something you actually enjoy and build from there.
Okay.
Maybe it's some yoga or a dance class or just putting on music and moving around your living room. Whatever feels good for you.
So true.
Yeah.
Okay, this next one is something I think we all struggle with, that inner critic, that voice that tells you you're not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Our source says we need to replace those criticisms with positive affirmations, but how do we actually deal that when the negative thoughts are so loud?
It's like we're bombarded by negative ads in our minds, right?
Mm.
Well, the key is to become aware of those ads and consciously decide to change the channel. Would you talk to a friend the way you sometimes talk to yourself?
Probably not.
So offer yourself that same kindness.
When I first heard about self-compassion, I thought it was cheesy, but the more I think about it, it makes so much sense. It's not about pretending everything's perfect.
Right.
It's about recognizing that we're all human, we all mess up, and that's okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And remember, self-compassion isn't a one-time thing. It's an ongoing practice.
Yeah.
Be patient and celebrate those small victories in changing your thoughts.
Okay, so the book also talks about the importance of connecting with others, even when it's hard. I know when I'm down, I isolate myself. Why is connecting so important?
Yeah, it's a natural instinct to withdraw when you're hurting.
Yeah.
But we're wired for connection.
Yeah.
We're social creatures, and isolation just feeds the depression. Reaching out, even in small ways, reminds us we're not alone. It can be a lifeline.
So what are some practical ways to connect when it feels overwhelming?
It doesn't need to be a big thing. Text a friend, join an online support group, even just chat with someone at the coffee shop.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing our struggles or just hearing how others are coping can be so powerful.
Yeah,
It reminds us we're in this together, and there's strength in that.
that makes a lot of sense. It's like we're all part of something bigger. We've talked about the mental and emotional parts of depression, but our source also mentions the connection between depression and physical health, like food and sleep.
Right. This is where it gets interesting because it shows how connected our minds and bodies really are.
Yeah.
What we eat and how we sleep has a huge impact on our mood. It's like fueling a car. You can't expect it to run well on bad gas and no oil change, right?
That's a good analogy. So we're talking about literally fueling our bodies for better mental health. But when you're depressed, even basic self-care can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
What are some simple things people can do with their food and sleep to start making a difference?
Think of it like giving your body the tools to be resilient. With food, focus on real whole foods, fruits, veggies, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And limit the processed stuff, the sugar rushes that lead to energy crashes,
Mm-hmm.
both physically and mentally.
So no crazy diets, just making better choices about what we eat.
Exactly.
Makes sense. What about sleep? I know I don't get enough.
Sleep. The foundation of well-being, but so often neglected. Aim for 7-8 hours a night. It's not just about quantity, though. It's about quality, too.
Yeah.
A calming bedtime routine can do wonders. Think warm baths, a good book, maybe some calming music,
Mm-hmm.
and put away the screens at least an hour before bed. That blue light is a sleep killer.
It's like creating a sanctuary for our minds to unwind.
Exactly.
I love that. You know, something that really resonated with me in the book is rediscovering joy, like actually doing things we used to love but have maybe forgotten about.
Oh, yeah.
Why is this so important when we're talking about depression?
Depression steals your joy, doesn't it? Saps your motivation, makes everything feel bleak. But getting back to those things that once made you happy can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that you're still capable of feeling joy, even when things are tough.
For me, it was painting. I used to love it, but then depression hit and I just starved. Picking it up again after so long felt weird at first, but then something changed. It was like a little spark.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the activity is, painting, dancing, gardening, playing music, whatever brings you joy.
Yeah.
It's tapping into that creative energy, that flow state where you lose track of time.
Yeah.
It's so therapeutic.
Okay, let's talk about something that's tough, seeking professional help.
Okay.
The book says it's important to reach out when things feel overwhelming or persistent.
Hmm.
It mentions therapies like CBT and maybe medication. I know there's a stigma around both of those.
Yeah, there is. And it's unfortunate because seeking professional help is brave. It's acknowledging you need support to go through this. Therapists are like guides who can help you through the fog.
What about medication? A lot of people worry about becoming dependent on it or that it will change them.
Medication isn't a magic solution, and it's not for everyone. But for some, it can be a lifesaver.
Mm-hmm.
It can help with the really tough symptoms of depression so you can actually start doing therapy and self-care. It's about finding what works for you.
Right.
And that usually means talking honestly with a doctor.
It's not about hiding the problem. It's about getting the support you need to address those underlying causes we talked about.
Exactly.
This next topic is something I found really helpful: mindfulness and meditation. Our source talks about apps like Headspace and Calm. Honestly, I was skeptical at first. I thought it was just new age stuff.
Haha.
But then I tried it and wow, it was like suddenly I had control over my own mind.
That's a great way to put it. Mindfulness is about training your mind to be less reactive, to observe your thoughts without getting swept away.
Yeah.
It's like creating space between you and the depression so you can see it better and choose how to react.
So it's not about stopping thinking altogether. It's more about becoming the observer, watching our thoughts without judgment.
Exactly. And meditation is great for that. Even a few minutes a day can help. It's like a mini vacation for your mind, a chance to reset.
You know, we've been talking a lot about the challenges of depression, but our source ends this section by saying we have to believe in the possibility of healing. That can be hard when you're struggling.
It is hard, but it's also essential. Because healing is possible. It's not a quick fix. It takes work,
Yeah.
but you can get there.
And it's okay if that belief isn't always strong. We're human. We'll have doubts and setbacks. The key is to keep coming back to that possibility, to keep reminding ourselves that we can create change.
It's about cultivating that resilience, that inner voice that says, you can do this, even when other voices are saying you can't.
I love that. When I think back to when I was first dealing with depression, the hardest part was feeling so alone. Like nobody could possibly understand what I was going through.
That feeling of isolation is a big part of depression, isn't it? It's like you're trapped in your own suffering. But here's the truth. Millions of people struggle with this.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
Just knowing that is powerful. Even if we don't share our struggles with others, just knowing we're not the only ones going through it is such a relief.
It's like we're all part of this invisible community connected by our shared experience. We may not always see each other, but we're there offering support.
I love that imagery of an invisible community. We've talked about external strategies for dealing with depression therapy, medication, exercise, connecting with others, but our source also highlights internal work shifting our perspective, changing those negative thought patterns.
Absolutely. It's like you have this inner landscape that needs just as much care as your physical body. And just like gardening, it takes time, patience, and the right tools to cultivate a healthy inner world.
So what are some of those tools? What are some concrete steps people can take to start shifting their perspective and challenging those negative thought patterns?
One powerful tool is cognitive reframing. It's about consciously choosing to look at things from a different angle,
Okay.
challenging those automatic negative thoughts and replacing them with more realistic ones.
So not denying the challenges, but choosing to focus on what we can control and looking for opportunities to learn and grow from every situation.
Exactly. It's like you're training your mind to be more flexible, to see the nuances and possibilities instead of just black and white.
Like a tree bending in the wind instead of breaking. And it reminds me of another tool, practicing gratitude.
Ah, gratitude. It's a
Well,
superpower. When you actively cultivate gratitude, you shift your focus from what's wrong to what's right. It's like hitting the reset button in your mind, helping you appreciate the good.
I've heard about gratitude journals, but never tried one. Is that a good place to start?
It can be, but it doesn't have to be formal. Just take a few moments each day to notice what you're grateful for. Maybe it's a cup of coffee, a sunny day, a kind word, or just the fact that you're alive.
It's like training ourselves to notice the little joys that we often take for granted, those sparks of beauty that brighten even the darkest days. Speaking of darkness, one of the things that often comes up with depression is hopelessness. Like things will never get better. What would you say to someone who feels that way?
First, I'd say, I hear you. I see your pain, and that's valid, because those feelings of hopelessness are real. But I'd also say, don't give up hope. You're stronger than you think, and even though it might not feel like it now, things can and will get better.
It's like holding on to that tiny flicker of light, even when surrounded by darkness. It might be hard to see, but it's always there. And sometimes just believing that things can get better is enough to keep us going.
Exactly. Hope is a powerful thing. It fuels our motivation to keep trying, to keep looking for solutions, to believe in a brighter future.
One thing that struck me in the book is forgiveness. Forgiving ourselves for our flaws, forgiving others who hurt us. How does forgiveness fit into breaking free from depression?
We often think of forgiveness as something we do for others, but it's really for ourselves.
Right.
When we hold on to anger and resentment, it weighs us down and stops us from moving on.
Like that saying, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Forgiveness isn't about saying what happened was okay. It's about letting go of that negativity so you can heal.
So how do we actually practice forgiveness when it feels so hard? There are times when I've held on to anger for years and it feels impossible to let go.
It's a process. It takes time. It starts by acknowledging the pain, feeling the hurt, and then consciously choosing to release it. Maybe through journaling, therapy, or even talking to the person who hurt you.
And sometimes it's more about acceptance than forgetting. We can accept that something bad happened without condoning it.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all human, we all make mistakes, and holding on to anger only hurts us.
Another theme that keeps coming up is finding meaning and purpose in life. How does that connect to breaking free from depression? Because when you're depressed, it can all feel meaningless.
That's what depression does. It steals your sense of purpose. But finding meaning is essential for healing. It gives you direction, something to work towards.
But how do we find that meaning when it feels like everything is meaningless?
It's a journey of self-discovery, and it's different for everyone. It might mean exploring your values, passions, and interests.
Okay.
Or connecting with something bigger than yourself. Your community, nature, spirituality, a cause you believe in.
It could be volunteering or pursuing a hobby or just spending time with loved ones.
Exactly. And it's not about finding one big purpose that defines your life.
Right.
It's about those things that bring you joy and a sense of connection.
And sometimes meaning comes from unexpected places. A random act of kindness, a moment with nature, a new appreciation for simple things.
Absolutely. And remember, finding meaning is an ongoing process. It's about staying curious, open to new experiences, always searching for things that make life feel worthwhile.
This has been such an insightful conversation. We've covered so much. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's take a moment to think about what's resonated with you. We'll be back in a bit to finish our exploration of breaking free from depression.
Okay, so we're back, and we were talking about finding those things that make life feel worthwhile. And it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day struggles and forget to take care of ourselves. Absolutely. Self-care is so crucial, especially when you're dealing with depression. And it doesn't have to be complicated or time-consuming. It's about those small acts of kindness we show ourselves.
Like what kind of things? What are some simple self-care practices that people can incorporate into their lives?
Well, it could be as simple as taking a few minutes each day to just breathe deeply and connect with your body. Or maybe it's treating yourself to a warm bath or listening to your favorite music. It's about creating space for yourself to recharge and nourish your soul.
One thing I've been trying to do is spend more time in nature. I find that even just a short walk in the park can really shift my perspective.
Nature is incredibly healing, isn't it? There's something about being surrounded by trees and fresh air that just calms the mind and soothes the soul.
It's like a reset button for the nervous system. And speaking of resetting, one of the things that can really throw us off balance is stress. Our source material talks about the importance of managing stress as part of our overall approach to dealing with depression.
Stress is a major trigger for depression, isn't it? When we're constantly bombarded with stress, our bodies and minds go into overdrive and it becomes much harder to cope.
So what are some effective ways to manage stress? I know there are tons of techniques out there, but what actually works?
Well, the key is to find what works for you. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. It might be exercise or meditation or spending time with loved ones, or maybe it's something creative like painting or writing. The important thing is to have a toolbox of strategies that you can draw from when you're feeling overwhelmed.
I love that toolbox of strategies. It's like we're building our own personal resilience toolkit.
Exactly. And the more tools we have in our toolkit, the better equipped we are to handle whatever life throws our way.
So we've talked about self-care, stress management, and finding meaning and purpose. But there's another aspect of breaking free from depression that we haven't touched on yet, setting boundaries.
Ah, yes, boundaries. Those invisible lines we draw to protect our physical, emotional, and mental well-being.
It sounds simple enough, but why are boundaries so important when we're dealing with depression?
Well, when we're depressed, we often feel depleted and drained, and we might be more likely to say yes to things that we don't really want to do or to let people overstep our boundaries.
That makes sense.
And this can lead to resentment, burnout, and even a worsening of our depression symptoms. Setting healthy boundaries helps us protect our energy and prioritize our own needs.
So how do we actually set those boundaries? It can be really hard to say no, especially when we're worried about disappointing others.
It does take practice. It's about learning to tune into our own needs and feelings, and then communicating those needs clearly and assertively. It's not about being selfish. It's about taking care of ourselves so that we can show up more fully for others.
It's like that oxygen mask analogy on airplanes. You have to put on your own mask first before you can help anyone else.
Exactly. Self-care is not selfish. It's essential. And setting boundaries is a key part of self-care.
One of the things that often comes up when we talk about boundaries is guilt. We might feel guilty for saying no or for putting our own needs first.
Guilt is a tricky emotion, isn't it? And it can definitely get in the way of setting healthy boundaries. But it's important to remember that we have the right to take care of ourselves, and that saying no doesn't make us bad people.
It's like we have to give ourselves permission to prioritize our own well-being.
Exactly. And sometimes that means saying no to things that we would normally say yes to, or letting go of relationships that are no longer serving us.
It can be a tough process, but ultimately it's about creating a life that feels authentic and aligned with our values.
Absolutely. And remember, setting boundaries is an ongoing process.
Right.
It's not something we do once and then we're done. We have to continually check in with ourselves and make adjustments as needed.
This has been such an empowering conversation. It feels like we're really starting to piece together a roadmap for breaking free from depression.
We are. And remember, it's a journey, not a race. There will be bumps along the way.
Right.
But the important thing is to keep moving forward, even if it's just one small step at a time.
Something that really resonates with me from our source material is this idea that breaking free from depression is not just about eliminating the negative, but also about cultivating the positive.
That's a powerful point.
Wow.
It's not just about getting rid of the bad stuff. It's about actively creating more good stuff in our lives.
So what are some ways we can cultivate more positivity in our lives?
Well, it could involve practicing gratitude, spending time with loved ones, pursuing our passions, or simply making time for things that bring us joy. It's about actively seeking out those experiences that lift our spirits and nourish our souls.
It's like we're intentionally shifting our focus from what's wrong to what's right.
Exactly. And this can have a profound impact on our overall well-being. When we focus on the positive, it becomes easier to cope with the challenges and to see the beauty in everyday moments.
It's like we're training our brains to see the world through a different lens, one that highlights the good instead of magnifying the bad.
And this takes practice. It's not about denying the negative or pretending that everything is perfect. It's about consciously choosing to focus on the things that uplift us and inspire us.
When I think about all the things we've discussed today, self-care, stress management, finding meaning and purpose, setting boundaries, cultivating positivity, it feels overwhelming at first, like it's just too much to handle.
It can feel that way. But remember, we don't have to do it all at once.
Hmm.
It's about taking small steps and celebrating our progress along the way.
And it's about remembering that we're not alone. There are people who care about us, resources available to support us, and a whole community of others who are on this journey with us.
Absolutely. You are not alone, and you are capable of healing and creating a life filled with joy and meaning.
This has been such a powerful conversation, and I'm so grateful for your insights and wisdom. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, you are strong, you are resilient, and you are worthy of happiness.
Beautifully said. Well, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive, and I hope you're feeling inspired and empowered to continue on your journey of breaking free from depression. And before we go, I just want to leave you with this one final thought. Healing is not a destination, it's a journey. It's a process of continual growth and evolution, and it's something that we can all embrace with courage, compassion, and hope. Welcome back to our deep dive. We've been exploring how to break free from depression, and it's been a powerful journey, right? We've talked about so much, and one thing that keeps coming up is that healing is possible.
Yeah, it really is. It may not be easy or straightforward, but it's something we can all work towards.
It's a journey with bumps in the road, right?
Definitely with twists and turns. Sometimes it feels like we take one step forward and two steps back. But remember, those backward steps are still part of the process.
I like that there are opportunities to learn, to adjust our course, and to build resilience.
Exactly. The book emphasizes being kind to ourselves, especially when those setbacks happen. When we're not making progress as fast as we'd like, it's easy to be hard on ourselves.
It is. Self-compassion is so important, right?
So important. It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a friend who's struggling.
Yeah.
It's about remembering that we're all human. We all make mistakes and deserve love and respect, especially from ourselves.
Extending that same compassion to ourselves can be really tough, though. We're often our own worst critics.
It's true. But that's where mindfulness comes in, right? Becoming aware of those critical thoughts and choosing to respond differently. Instead of beating ourselves up, we can offer encouragement and support.
So we're like our own best friend, our own cheerleader.
Exactly. And gratitude can really help with that too.
Yeah.
When I focus on what I'm grateful for, it's harder to stay stuck in those negative thought patterns.
Yeah, I found that too. Gratitude is powerful.
It really is. It helps us see the good even when things are tough. And it doesn't have to be anything big. Just appreciating simple things like a cup of tea, a sunny day,
Yeah.
a kind word.
Those little things can make a big difference. You know, we've covered a lot in this deep dive. But if there's one thing I hope you take away, it's this: you're not alone.
That's so important to remember.
So many people understand what you're going through, and there's help available.
Reaching out for help isn't weak. It's strong. It takes courage to acknowledge you need support, and there's no shame in asking for it.
And healing is a journey, not a destination, right?
Right.
There will be ups and downs. But be kind to yourself through it all. Celebrate the small wins and never give up hope. So what's one tiny step you can take today to move towards a brighter future?
Hold on to that question. Let it guide you, even if it's just taking a deep breath and remembering that you deserve healing and happiness.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into breaking free from depression. We're here to support you, and we believe in your strength and resilience. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next time.